Shifting focus to the broader African market. Now, recently, Moody's cut Senegal's credit rating and maintained its negative outlook on the West African nation. The ratings agency cited rising debt levels, high financing needs, and delays in securing IMF support, even as the government ramps up its fiscal consolidation efforts as reasons for the move. Una Esterhuizen, economist at Oxford Economics Africa, joins us with his analysis of Moody's review of Senegal. Una, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. And let's start with the not so good news, right? We also saw a upgrade in Ghana, but we'll start off with what's playing out in Senegal. Take us through the reason behind the downgrade. Was it more a liquidity challenge or a solvency problem, given the debt to GDP ratio and rising financing costs?
Well, firstly, good afternoon, and thanks for having me. So the downgrade reflects several structural issues on Senegal's side. So firstly, following the fiscal scandal of hidden debt by the previous administration, there's been several increases in the debt to GDP ratio, which is now most recently estimated at 119% of GDP at the end of last year. And this high debt burden coincides with gross financing needs that Moody's estimates at 26% of GDP, and interest payments, debt interest payments that the agency thinks will equate to 27% of GDP next year. So the whole fiscal situation in Senegal has effectively also cut off the country from international capital markets, and it obviously resulted in a stall in the previous IMF program. So as a result, Senegal has been kind of left with no option but to rely more on relatively more expensive regional borrowing. So these factors, together with weak budget transparency, governance concerns, and ongoing drags in the current IMF discussions around potentially, firstly, a waiver on the previous program, and secondly, on the potential of a new program. The culmination of all these issues have amplified investor caution and obviously rating agency concerns as well. So these factors together point towards heightened financing and liquidity risks, and this will make debt reduction more challenging over the medium term.
And let's zoom in on negotiations with the IMF. Where do they stand at the moment? You touched on it. Their funding, of course, has been suspended.
Yeah, so at present, most signaling around IMF and Senegal discussions are cautiously optimistic. There hasn't been any final calls yet, but it seems that authorities are very willing to work with the IMF, and they acknowledge and realize the importance of renewed concessional funding from the IMF. And at the same time, the IMF is also, they're visiting Senegal quite frequently. And there's a lot of, so the signaling is fairly positive, but at the same time, there hasn't been any concrete calls. And what will essentially determine whether or not Senegal manages, firstly, for the previous the disbursements under the previous program to be waived, and then also proceeding to discussions and negotiations and eventually concluding a new deal will, that will all hinge on the budget, the draft budget of next year, and other commitments that Senegal and the IMF agree to going forward.
And talking about commitments from Senegal, the country has also, laid out specific plans to get its finances in order. The country aims to garner around $10 billion over 3 years by increasing taxes, renegotiating energy contracts, and reducing spending. How feasible is that plan, Luna?
Yeah, so the draft budget for 2026 was announced fairly recently. And the budget essentially focuses around strengthening revenue collection, and obviously then also tightening expenditure control, and also tries to advocate for a more measured borrowing approach. The revenue targets of the budget are quite optimistic. So
Okay.
they are the revised budget of 2025 points to a 7.8% of GDP fiscal deficit, which the government aims to reduce to 5.4% of GDP next year and 3% of GDP by 2027. So that's obviously a very fast rate of fiscal consolidation. And next year's deficit hinges on a 27.1% increase in revenue and grants, which, given the fact that revenue collection has underperformed this year already, that's very optimistic. So there are plans to introduce new taxes on mobile money and gaming, and also to improve revenue collection. And these are, especially the revenue collection side and subsidies and tax reform, etc., is often a mainstay of an IMF program. So that's not surprising. But what would be very crucial in actually, yielding positive results is being able to impose these reforms and then have it actually result in higher tax collection. So from my point of view, the budget, the spending estimates are more reasonable, but I think that the assumptions around revenue collection, especially over the near term, are quite optimistic.
Yeah, so implementation seems to be key at this point. And keeping that draft budget in mind, what's investor sentiment like? I mean, you touched on how Senegal has had to go the more expensive route when it comes to funding because they've lost out on that IMF program. Outside looking in, are investors looking beyond these downgrades and concerns around the public finances?
So surprisingly, investor sentiment is holding up quite well if you look at the appetite for Senegalese debt in the Wembu regional market.
Okay.
So they've been tapping the regional market frequently this year, and their latest issuance was oversubscribed by 1.5 times, and they managed to raise almost $800 million. So this it kind of illustrates that, investors are still keen on the country and they're willing to support the government despite the recent downgrade by Moody's and previous downgrades as well. And a lot of this optimism is obviously stemming from the oil and gas production that's really supported and boosted growth so far this year. But at the same time, the fact that Senegal is now relying on short-term regional funding, exposes the country to other risks like rollover risk or liquidity risks, where, if the market were to turn less liquid or become more volatile, costs could raise quite quickly, and access to funding could tighten. So while investors remain quite bullish on the country's prospects, the ability to tap the regional market now for short-term financing doesn't necessarily guarantee medium-term fiscal sustainability.
All right, let's move over to Ghana quickly. They got a more positive review from Moody's. How much of Ghana's upgrade, Luna, reflects genuine fiscal reform, and how much is on the back of, I guess, temporary commodity windfalls? We've seen higher gold prices, higher cocoa prices as well.
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I think it's fairly balanced. Both factors have kind of contributed, more or less equally. So the new government has really done well in terms of improving revenue collection and tightening the screws on spending. So the fiscal picture does look a lot better than it did a year ago or at the end of last year around the election time. So there's definitely a lot of improvement on Ghana's fiscal side, and that it's broader than that. The monetary environment has improved a lot. Inflation is within the central bank's target range. There's been quite aggressive monetary loosening measures by the central bank, etc. So the upgrade by Moody's reflects the progress on the fiscal side and obviously on the debt side following the much of the restructuring that's already complete. But the broader picture, like you alluded to, is also better, and a lot of that is due to gold prices, especially supporting the external position and boosting reserves, supporting the cedi, etc. So it's on the fiscal side, there's definitely progress, but it's also on the economic side. Obviously, that means that there's still and this is the case with many African countries, there's still a lot of reliance on commodities. So, you know, what's good today, high gold prices, etc., that doesn't necessarily mean that growth or upside potential will be sustained going forward.
And it's been interesting seeing how a lot of these African countries have been trying to diversify from being commodities-linked markets and trying to establish other markets that can boost growth. And just quickly before I let you go, how should investors interpret the fact that both countries share the same rating but with very different outlooks?
Yeah, so that's it's quite ironic actually. They both, Ghana was upgraded to CAA1 with a stable outlook, and Senegal was downgraded to CAA1 with a negative outlook. I think the key differentiator there is the outlook.
Okay.
So while, you know, Ghana's fiscal consolidation process and the debt restructuring and the cost of living crisis and all of that is is kind of a thing of the past, at least for now. So that signals, you know, to investors that the worst is over, and if the government can sustain the progress and the reform it's made under the support of the IMF, which Ghana has historically not been good at doing, but if it can break that cycle and continue, then, you know, the country might be able to reach new barriers, where in Senegal might, you know, the rating might be the same. Some of the, you know, obviously Moody's metrics or risk assessments might be similar, but everything that Ghana has gone through already is still an obstacle on Senegal's course that it's trying to avoid. So that obviously warrants more caution, and one would, you know, Senegal would have to take all the right steps in the next few months if the country were to avoid any worsening in the debt situation, a worsening in borrowing conditions, and essentially, yeah, if Senegal, if the government actually succeeds in re-embarking on a fiscal consolidation path and bringing government debt down, that would require all the right steps going forward.
All right, let's leave it there. Luna, thanks so much for your time and just taking us through, you know, those ratings reviews for both Ghana and Senegal. That was Luna Esterhuizen, economist at Oxford Economics Africa.